Hey, what is up everyone? In this video, I'll be playing as the Warlock class. Warlocks deal heavy damage and can also inflict debuffs by using pestilent weapons, which requires malice. Malice can be recovered by just waiting or by right-clicking with the weapon. You do an attack in a close proximity range, which speeds up this process even faster. I hope everyone enjoys the video. Alright, so to get my first weapon, it's a pretty simple task. All I need is 12 pieces of wood and 12 gel. So that's exactly what I did. I chopped down some trees and killed some slimes for some gel, to then make the wildfire torch. Left clicking with this torch shoots out a projectile that's similar to the wand of sparking. And right clicking makes a explosion around your body that recovers your malice very quickly. At night, I built some empty houses and then I started mining towards hell. I mined some ore and also found a few life crystals. Alright, now it's time to craft some new equipment. When I made it down to hell, I mined some obsidian bricks, and I used those bricks to make the depths cowl, and it pretty much just increases my damage. I don't think there was any other weapons that I could have gotten that was better than the wildfire torch, so I ended up just summoning the Eye of Cthulhu. This fight took an insanely long time to beat, since my weapon was only dealing 1 damage to it. The only time I was able to deal a good amount of damage was when it got super close to me, and that's when I right clicked with my weapon to deal around 30ish damage. Before I fought the next boss, I went underground and searched for some more life crystals. When I found enough, I went down to the Crimson and summoned the Brain of Cthulhu. Now for this boss, it was quite tricky to fight. I was still dealing 1 to 2 damage, and the timing to right click to kill the eyeballs were a lot harder to get down. But after all of the floating eyes were gone, it was definitely a lot easier. Now that I have some tissue sample from the Brain of Cthulhu, I made the Death Trident and the Vengeful Dagger. Left clicking with this weapon throws a trident that spawns 2 purple flaming balls that drops down and passes through blocks. And the Vengeful Dagger is like the vampire knives, but a lot worse. Every hit on an enemy heals me by 1 HP. Next up, I built an arena at the dungeon. And at night, I summoned Skeletron. The Death Trident was surprisingly really good, since Skeletron had a really huge hitbox, so it was able to fly into both balls of flame. So now that Skeletron has been defeated, it's time for me to get my hands on a new weapon. This weapon can be obtained by killing skeletons for their bones, and by collecting spikes in the dungeon. After collecting 60 spikes and 20 bones, I made the Ancient Warhammer. And it's pretty much just a boomerang, but very short ranged. I found more life crystals and then I dealt with the goblin army. Now it's time to craft an accessory. I needed some ink, so I went to the ocean and killed a squid. I combined the ink and some wood to make the Incorrect Opinion, which increases my malice and damage, and then I used that to make the bone pad. I went back down to hell and made a bridge to fight the wall of flesh. After I was done, I threw the voodoo doll into the lava and started the fight. I ended up using the Death Trident throughout the entire fight, since it was the obvious weapon of choice. I mean, look at how well it did against Skeletron. After defeating the wall of flesh, I got my hands on the Warlock emblem. Now that I'm in hard mode, it's time to get a weapon that's more suited for the difficulty. I went down the Crimson and killed some Ichor stickers for their lovely golden juice to make the Sixicle. And just like the Ancient Warhammer, it's basically like a boomerang, but it inflicts cursed flames. I then completed my Depths armor set using obsidian bricks and hellstone bricks. This armor set gives me more damage, more critical strike, and immunity to knockback. I was able to find the wizard underground, so I bought the magic ball from him to make some spirit accessories. I made a new best friend that reduces my max malice and regen, but it increases my life regeneration, and I also made the scheming spirit, which pretty much does the exact opposite, so everything balances out. I built up into the sky and farmed some wyverns for their souls of flight to make wings. When I collected enough souls of flight, I made the demon wings. Alright, so we have a pretty decent hard mode weapon, but now we need hard mode armor. And to make the armor, I'm gonna need some dark shards. But since there was no crimson desert in the world, I had to make my own. After killing plenty of dark mummies, I finally got enough dark shards. I first made some ancient armor with some cloth and silk, and then I combined the armor with dark shards to make the awakened armor. It's pretty much better than the depths armor of course, but it gives immunity to the mighty wind. And I'm just assuming that's the blizzard or sandstorm. Now it's time to kill all 3 mechanical bosses, starting with the destroyer. So I realized that throwing the sickle at it directly is not going to work. It'll only do damage to one segment of its body. So instead I jumped and then threw it right over its body, so that way it can come back to me while shredding through multiple segments. With some of the hollowed bars that I got from the destroyer, I made the holy fork. But after using it for a bit, I realized that it wasn't so great. If it touches any block too soon, it won't spawn the 2 fireballs. When night arrived, I summoned the twins. I tried using the holy fork first, but it was just so inaccurate, so I ended up just using the sickle. Right after the twins were defeated, I summoned Sailotron Prime. After making the pickaxe axe, I went down to the jungle and mined some chlorophyte ore. After mining enough chlorophyte, I made the chlorophyte staff. And this had to be one of the more stronger weapons. The right click makes a huge explosion that can damage enemies through blocks, and left clicking shoots out projectiles that also pass through blocks. After finding the Plantera bulb, I built an arena to get ready for the fight. Once I was done with the arena, I broke the Plantera bulb to summon the boss. I got a few good hits in before it even reached me. Also, I forgot to mention that one click with this staff shoots out 5 projectiles. So I was fighting Plantera in its second phase, and while I was fighting her, some of my projectiles missed, so it ended up traveling into a beehive, which summoned the Queen Bee. Obviously this wasn't a problem for me, but it just meant that this weapon could have an unlimited range. After obtaining the key, I made my way into the temple. After making it all the way down to the bottom floor, I summoned the Golem. After returning back up on the surface, there was a solar eclipse, and after killing a Mothron, it dropped a Mothron scale. These scales can be used to make the next set of armor and weapon. Once I got enough scales and ectoplasm, I crafted the eclipse armor. With this armor, it increases my max malice by 35. After creating the armor, I went to the ocean and summoned Duke Fishron. There was a weapon that I wanted to get from him. I also crafted the Phantom Javelin. After throwing it, it spawns 2 electrical circles. After defeating Duke Fishron, I got a weapon called the Sharpshooter, and it's exactly what you think it is. It shoots out homing sharks. Now that I have a better weapon, I summoned the Lunatic Cultist, and with the Sharpshooter, it made the fight a lot easier, since I didn't have to aim 100% accurately. After defeating the lunatic cultist, it dropped an item called the Alien Dial. When I got back home and used it, well, let's just say this was something that I did not expect. Next up on the list is to destroy all 4 pillars. After destroying the Vortex and Stardust pillar, I got some fragments from them which I used to make the Equinox Smasher. With this weapon I finished off the last remaining pillars, the Solar Pillar and the Nebula Pillar. And now it's time to take on Moonlord. The Equinox Smasher is such a good weapon, it does over 1000 damage every time it hits, so I was actually able to kill Moonlord pretty fast. Alright, so I beat Moonlord, but that's not the end of the video, there's still a little bit more to do. I defeated Moonlord a couple more times to get enough materials to craft the endgame armor. There was also one more weapon, and it's the very last weapon that's in this mod pack, and it's called the Lightless Dark, and it's made by combining all of the other Warlock weapons that I've made into one. And as you can see, right clicking makes a black hole that sucks in all nearby enemies and NPCs. And left clicking summons these black worms that chase down the enemies, dealing massive amounts of damage. And here's an example of how strong this weapon is. And to finish this video off, I summoned the Edgelorian, which I failed to do before. And with the Lightless Dark, this boss was a breeze. After killing this boss, all it dropped were more Equinox fragments. Alright, and we're done. I hope you guys enjoyed the video and the playthrough of the Warlock class. Hopefully you guys found this interesting. I know I did. And yeah, thank you guys so much for watching once again, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.